Matthew Tkachuk's injury is not season ending.
You're Locked On Panthers, your daily podcast on the Florida Panthers. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
And welcome into this Tuesday, February 25th edition of the Locked On Florida Panthers podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, where it's your team every day. Thank you for making the Locked On Florida Panthers podcast your first listen of the day. I'm Armando Velez from the Hockey News. You can follow me on X at MondoMan12 and Blue Sky at MondoMan12. Follow the show account on X and Instagram at @LO_FLA Panthers and on Blue Sky at LOFLA Panthers. You can follow the podcast anywhere you listen to podcasts and on YouTube. You can subscribe. And also, if you are on the YouTube, make sure to smash that like button down below. So, Panther fans, grateful to be back here once again on the show. Today's edition of the show, we will discuss Matthew Tkachuk's injury, what the latest update there is. We're going to talk about Sam Bennett and his upcoming free agency and what general managers are thinking across the league coming up for Sam Bennett. And also preview tonight's game between the Florida Panthers and the Nashville Predators ahead of tonight, 8 p.m. at Bridgestone Arena. So Paul Maurice went on the Joe Rose Show on 560 WQAM yesterday to discuss the extent of the injury to Matthew Tkachuk, and he said, quote, "I don't have a timeline. We're hoping it's not too serious. There's a possibility it's not too serious, but there's a possibility that is a bit longer term. Even with that, he's playing for us this year. It's not that kind of thing," close quote. And this is something that makes sense when you think about pulling something in the lower body, and we're assuming that, and even though assumptions are not a place that we should go, that if you're thinking the groin area as someone who's pulled that part of the body, a lot of times you just need to sit and let it heal by itself when it comes to that. And Frank Zaravelli spoke about how Matthew Tkachuk had a noticeable limp coming out of the arena at TD Garden, coming out of the Four Nations tournament when the USA did lose to Canada in the final just a few days ago. So, again, the Florida Panthers doctors didn't have their chance to really get a grasp on him about the extent of the injury until recently for them. And discussing all that, seeing it looks like it's better news than we expected for it. So also, the Panthers did hit the ice in Fort Lauderdale yesterday, and Paul Maurice did have an opportunity to speak to the local media there as well, and he said, quote, "We're vague about these before we get the report because there's always a chance of everything, right? There always could be something unusual in one of these, but I don't think it is. I'm not worried about it," close quote. And here's also the thing when it comes to that. Paul Maurice did not say regular season nor postseason. He didn't say anything regarding what part of the season. I mean, it's a sure thing that the Panthers are going to be in the postseason this year. I mean, Money Puck has them at a 99% chance of making it. It would take an epic collapse and a lot of games in a row where they get 0 points in order for them to fall out of the playoff picture for them. So it's a sure thing that there are going to be in the postseason. So that begs the question when it comes to Matthew Tkachuk, LTIR. And I know for us fans, we want the Panthers to give themselves an opportunity to bolster their lineup and to be stronger when it comes to the postseason. And this timing is interesting as well when it comes to the injury, the trade deadline coming up on March 7th, which is going to be it's creeping up on us when it comes to that. And the second leading scorer for the Panthers is out. So there's opportunities for Carter Verhaeghe, who struggled this season, even though he recently had a hat trick. Sam Bennett was on power play one in their Saturday game against the Seattle Kraken. So that's also the opportunity for them. But also Matthew Tkachuk did have an opportunity to go on the Tonight Show starring Jimmy Fallon to discuss everything about how he's feeling, playing with his brother, Four Nations. He said, quote, "I'm feeling better, just recovering right now, but the last 2 weeks representing my country is something I'll never forget," close quote. So let's go back to the LTIR conversation for the Panthers here. And if Matthew Tkachuk does, in fact, go on LTIR, that would give the Panthers around $13 million in cap space going into the trade deadline and an opportunity to bolster once again their lineup going into the latter part of the season for them. And it just depends where I'm going to be refreshing Puckpedia over the next few days to see if they actually transition that money into LTIR. They've accrued a good amount of space already for what they for not utilizing LTIR, and it's still about around $3 million for them, and they're going to have to get creative. And it's already the conversation about the teams being wary of the Panthers when it comes to pulling something out of a hat when it comes to getting players to South Florida. And if the opportunity does come for the Florida Panthers to use that with LTIR, they're already asset poor when it comes to possible trades for them. And the few that they do have left, we still don't know what the status of Jack Devine is going to be. Not injury status, but the status of whether he's going to sign his ELC or he's going to get traded for the Panthers. A 7th round pick that has worked out well for them. We don't know if a Zach Hyman situation is going to happen again for the Panthers. But if the opportunity does present itself for the Panthers here, it gives themselves an opportunity to not give as much up for a player if they want to bring someone in for them. And Elliot Friedman spoke about it on 32 Thoughts on Monday, discussing he wonders if the Panthers are going to pull off something in regarding Blackhawks defenseman Seth Jones, who's making over $9 million for the next few years until 2030 with the Chicago Blackhawks. And if that, the only way that fits is if Matthew Tkachuk is stashed on LTIR. There's also reports of Mikko Rantanen possibly being linked to the Panthers, but if you're the Carolina Hurricanes making that trade, you're not going to recoup what you got back for Mikko Rantanen when you gave away Marty Necas. So if you're Eric Tulsky, you want to go into the offseason saying that you swung for the fences and that you are going for it, even if you don't give yourself the opportunity to re-sign Mikko Rantanen. And Elliot also spoke about this, about him not signing a contract at that point in time, about getting over an ex, a rough breakup, and then finally giving yourself the space and to think about signing something on the dotted line before committing again, which is a great comparison if you really think about it. But there's also the possibility of bringing other guys in and not having the other teams retain salary. You could also afford to take on some of the full salaries depending on which player you go after. And this was a conversation over the last few days, and I just want to put a little bit of an end of the conversation temporarily about the inevitability, quote unquote, of Brady Tkachuk ending up on the same team as Matthew. And right now, Brady would have to request the trade out of Ottawa, and they're in the middle of a playoff race. So any conversation of Brady Tkachuk coming to South Florida, I'm going to put that to rest in the next, for this season and coming up even next season. I think the earliest you can make that trade possibly is 2026, when the Panthers do have room opened up in their books. And this is the pros and cons of having this dilemma for the Panthers here, whether you wait for the postseason or allow him to come back, because there's value that comes with not putting Matthew Tkachuk on LTIR, because if you give yourself an opportunity for him to come back, you could give yourself that opportunity to have him mesh and get some playing time with a youngster like Mackie Samoskevich. You're not going to get that, and you're going to put that in for game 1 of the postseason. That's a big gamble if you are Bill Zito and company. Even though Mackie has shown lots of strides this season, and he's been a great playmaker, a burst of speed, great hands, gets back on in transition on back checks. So that also gives that opportunity for Mackie Samoskevich if Matthew Tkachuk were to return to the lineup. And going back to Seth Jones, if you do end up trading for him, his durability is great when it comes to his 11-year career for him. And if they were to make that trade carried over to the next season, the Chicago Blackhawks do have a retention slot left. So that trade could be possible at a lower cap hit, and you could even carry it over to next season. And let's compare and contrast if you were to let that deal take on that deal and let it expire to 2030 versus if you were to give Aaron Ekblad an 8-year deal and that would take him to 2033. So you would give yourself that future flexibility if you decide to pivot from Ekblad to Seth Jones. But it's a player that already knows your system versus bringing someone in. And yeah, people are going to look at the numbers. People are going to see minus 130 as far as his plus minus, which is not the be all end all stat, once again, that we like to say on the show. And also the amount of poor teams that he's played for over the last few years in Chicago recently, and even some down years after our Artemi Panarin and Sergei Bobrovsky left for them. So doesn't necessarily paint the whole picture of Seth Jones, and it's a right-handed shot that the Panthers could be going after. But if the Panthers do in fact bring in Seth Jones, I think it's going to be an off-season acquisition. If they do this year, it'll have to be with Matthew Tkachuk on LTIR. And again, you wouldn't be able to bring him back until game 1 of the postseason. And the fact that Paul Maurice gave us that update regarding that is good news as far as on the ice. As far as trying to bolster up the lineup, it may not be what a lot of people wish as far as getting them ready. But at the same time, Matthew Tkachuk himself, he's as pro of a pro as it comes. He'll be if it takes him to game 1 of the postseason to get back and healthy. As far as regarding the salary cap and the Panthers unable to bring him, he'll be ready. But at the same time, it's really about if Mackie Samoskevich is a fit on the second line, you want to get him as many regular season games with Matthew Tkachuk for them to get ready instead of game 1 of the postseason. Which if Mackie Samoskevich was a 3 or 4 year player already, then you don't think about that too much. So that's really my worry if you were to not bring Matthew Tkachuk, back in the regular season. But we're going to transition over to segment number 2, where we are going to discuss more about Sam Bennett's free agency and what general managers are thinking when it comes to his performance from the Four Nations. We're going to discuss that and more next here on the Locked On Florida Panthers podcast. Today's episode is brought to you by Indeed. You just realized your business needed to hire someone yesterday? How can you find amazing candidates fast? Easy. Just use Indeed. When it comes to hiring, Indeed is all you need. Stop struggling to get your job post seen on other sites. Indeed Sponsored Jobs puts your post at the top of the page and help you reach the candidates faster. Now you can speed up your hiring process with a $75 sponsored job credit. Just go to Indeed.com/lockedon right now and support our show by saying you heard about Indeed on this podcast. Terms and conditions apply. Hiring? Indeed is all you need. Segment number 2 here on this Tuesday, February 25th edition of the Locked On Florida Panthers podcast. Thank you once again for making the Locked On Florida Panthers podcast your first listen of the day here on a Tuesday. So the forward for the Florida Panthers, Sam Bennett, a big part of Team Canada and has been a big part of the Florida Panthers over the last few postseasons, especially for him. And when it comes to postseason performances, Sam Bennett's nickname Playoff Sam has been a thing even going back to his Calgary days on just how he steps up. And, there has been sometimes even underwhelming regular seasons for Sam Bennett in the past, in even at times going on this season with 20 straight games without scoring a goal. And it's funny because I joked about even after the Four Nations final, is like, does Benny's buddies include a goal in international play, asking for a friend? And I got quite a few laughs there from that question. But the spotlight, especially there are few players in the Four Nations face-off that had quite a few that were spotlighted even more. Sam Bennett was one of them. Zach Werenski was another. Jacob Slavin is a third person that I could think of about just giving so many lasting impressions. And yeah, even there are 32 teams playing 82 games, and it's really hard to catch every single game, obviously. But when you just have one game at a time to focus on, no games overlapping, you really have yourself an opportunity to really pinpoint and look at guys. So you could see how possibly, if you're a general manager, how that player could fit on your team. And listen, this is something that is spoken about in hockey over multiple years about winning down the middle. Everyone wants a piece of a champion when it comes to improving their own. So Sam Bennett for other teams has spoken about on the sheet with Jeff Merrick. He got a text from a general manager, an anonymous general manager, saying that Sam Bennett's upcoming free agency is going to be seen as a cattle auction. So especially if you are a farmer out there, you know how much cattle can go for when it comes to just trying to bid and get your little piece of it in order to build your farm and just build your overall team. And that's what Sam Bennett is seen as after his performance at the Four Nations, getting the game tying goal in the second period for Team Canada against the USA. How he brings that grit, the tenacity, identity. That's what some teams around the NHL are looking for, and they want, once again, to bring that to their roster. And of course, with the salary cap, the bill comes due for every single team when it comes to winning for them. I mean, you think about for Sam Bennett's upcoming free agency. I mean, think about all the other players who are making just above Sam Bennett for them. I mean, Carter Verhaeghe, who scores 40 goals, Sam Reinhart, who's on track to have another 40 goal season for him. Uh, Obviously, Sasha Barkov, who provides a bunch of two-way play for the Panthers. You get where I'm going here, but again, the focus for the Florida Panthers should be to allocate the money towards their back end, because you are doing yourself a disservice to Spencer Knight and Sergei Bobrovsky if you are gonna just put it mostly on your forward core. I can guarantee that if the Panthers do abandon that part of the roster, as great as Gustav Forsling is, that it's going to create a lot of high danger chances. And next season is going to be mostly a year, as far as what I'm looking for, of how the Panthers go through their goaltending department after the season. This season is about, this offseason is about how you rebuild the defense core. The season after is whether the front office believes that Spencer Knight is the guy, and you need to put help around him about when it comes to the defense core, about how they collapse, clear the net front, and everything in between there. So for the Panthers and Sam Bennett, I don't offer him more than $7 million a year for based on the production that he brings, how poor that it could age with possible injuries there as well for Benny. I mean, that's the style of play that he brings. It's gonna unfortunately have him miss some time. I mean, and get a whole bunch of bumps and bruises. And you got to give yourself also an opportunity to also graduate some of your forwards from the farm if they do in fact pan out for them. I mean, we mentioned Jack Devine earlier for the Panthers. If he gets that opportunity, and you need to find a way to develop the cheap talent on your roster for the Panthers, so we got to see there for them on how they get through that next wave of young talent for them. And the Panthers farm is already ranked the worst in the NHL, and I guess you want to be if that means winning multiple Stanley Cups and your farm is at the bottom. I guess I guess that's a great thing. That means you are competitive and you're always going for it. And the Panthers, they're asset poor right now. The Panthers also, in my opinion, should emphasize trying to extend Jesper Boquist on a short-term deal for him. We mentioned that as far as Kevin Stenlund last year. Unfortunately, the Panthers couldn't get the proper number for him to get and the term for him to stay a little bit. But hey, congratulations once again on him getting term on his deal. For the Panthers here, there's also young talent in possibly Grayson Sachin, who's probably not going to be on the NHL roster next year. Maybe he'll make a game or two, but it's not going to be something that the Panthers are going to rush getting him some games. So we'll mention Justin Sordiff a little bit later, but he's had some seasoning in the AHL in the last 2 years, so that he's going to possibly get an opportunity to fill some of the spots for the Panthers on the lineup as far as the cheap talent, and that's what great teams do when it comes to replenishing talent and for the players who are getting paid big, you got to bring the complementary pieces along the way, and thankfully, as of right now. Now and into at least until 2030, Anton Lundell is still making $5 million until 2030. So that is a contract that if he does graduate to second line center, which he plays like one, that is going to age quite well for the Panthers, and Lundell taking that second line center spot for the Panthers could be the difference in continuing to contend, which the footwork is there, how he battles along the boards. And even though he's not necessarily the best skater for him, that is a trend for Anton Lundell on just the habits that he has, similar to Alexander Barkov, as we like to refer as we have referred so many times here on the show. But we're going to transition over to segment number 3, where we are going to preview tonight's game between the Florida Panthers and the Nashville Predators. We are going to discuss that and more next here on the Locked On Florida Panthers podcast. Segment number 3 here on this Tuesday, February 25th edition of the Locked On Florida Panthers podcast. Thank you once again for making the Locked On Florida Panthers podcast your first listen of the day here on a Tuesday. So the Panthers face off against the Predators tonight from Bridgestone Arena, the last game out of the Eastern time zone, for the rest of the regular season. So the last 23 for the Panthers are going to be in the East. And the toughest part of the schedule, really, for the Panthers coming up will be an extensive road trip through the Eastern time zone across Canada and parts of the Northeast and the Midwest for the Panthers, all coming in a span of a week and a half for them. So, and again, a luxury for the Panthers is that they don't have their next back-to-back won't be until March 15th and 16th. So this is an opportunity for the Panthers to get some rest from now until then. This game for the Panthers and the Predators, I would wonder if Spencer Knight is actually going to be between the pipes for the Panthers, as his last start came 19 days ago. I don't think that the Panthers are gonna go from the Four Nations break and then waiting until a back-to-back situation to put Spencer Knight in between the pipes again. And for a team that's struggling in the Nashville Predators, I think this would be probably an opportunity to get him some playing time and get him some reps for him. The Panthers will not only are without Matthew Tkachuk, but they will also be without Eetu Luostarinen. No, it's not injury related for him. He's actually staying behind in South Florida due to the birth of his child. So congratulations to him and his wife, Tia, for bringing a new baby into the world. So Justin Sordiff, as we mentioned earlier, will be playing his first NHL game since October 21st of 2023. So hasn't exceeded 10 minutes of ice time in his 3 NHL games. Tonight will be his 4th. So I'm expecting them to be on a line with Tomas Nosek and Jonah Gadjevich. So expect the top line to be worked a lot. AJ Greer is likely to go onto Eetu Luostarinen's spot for Tuesday night there. And also the last time the Panthers were in Nashville, what happened? Another player missed the game due to the birth of his child. Gustav Forsling missed last year's game in Nashville due to the birth of his child, Bo. So So hey, if history repeats himself, maybe we'll see the Florida Panthers win the Stanley Cup once again. So it was a 2-1 game before 2 empty netters for the Panthers to ice the game, and Anthony Stolarz was outstanding, especially getting the glove while he was on his side with Gustav Nyquist right in the slot, and then he gets the glove up just to keep the Predators from scoring at the very end. So once again, one of the many performances that Anthony Stolarz had for the Florida Panthers last season. Really, truly an unsung hero for the Panthers. Barkov also didn't play that game either, and they were still able to get 38 shots on UC Saros. And even in the game earlier this season, between the Panthers and the Nashville Predators back in November, it was the game that the Panthers were in their first game coming off of the Global Series, which the Panthers were carrying so much momentum from that. They had that New York trip where they won 3 in a row, those 2 games against the Dallas Stars, and embracing robe culture coming back from the Global Series. And that game was over 2 minutes into the second period when they went up 2-0. The Nashville Predators were struggling offensively. This is something that we spoke about for them coming into the season. While center depth is still quite the issue for the Preds. Ryan O'Reilly is probably someone who should be in the middle 6 for a contending team, but he's playing on the top 6 for them. So that's that is something that the Nashville Predators would definitely be looking for this offseason, with $27 million in cap space with 5 roster spots to fill. So they can spend big. Again, they already went for it this offseason. So why not double down along that with 3 first-round picks as well to trade for them. So that's for if you're Barry Trotz and company, why not continue to do it when you've already committed so much money to guys like Steven Stamkos, Jonathan Marchessault, Brady Shea. So that's another thing for Nashville, that why punt now? Obviously, there is the conversation on what's going to happen for Andrew Burnett after the season. They haven't fired him. They're 16 points out of the last wild card spot, so they're going to be sellers at the deadline for them. So Jesper Boquist did talk about the situation for the Panthers coming into this, and he said, quote, "Everyone gets a little more of an opportunity, and you just got to make the most out of it. I feel like we got a couple of guys that are prepared for it," close quote. Hey, Jesper Boquist is going to possibly play a bigger role for the Panthers. Evan Rodriguez was on that second line for the Cats in their most recent game against the Seattle Kraken, and really with the flexibility that Evan Rodriguez brings, it does it does help the Panthers as they're getting through this injury for Matthew Tkachuk, and even for one game that they're going to be missing Eetu Luostarinen, who we expect to be back on Thursday when the Florida Panthers take on the Edmonton Oilers. And really, the Nashville Predators, although this is a down year for them, they do have an opportunity with how well they've managed trades for them, with the Tanner Jeannot trade looking like a bust trade for the Tampa Bay Lightning, how much they gave up for him. And now that's one of the 3 first-round picks, and also developing a goalie prospect in Yaroslav Askarov that they traded away to the San Jose Sharks as a better path to the NHL as they extended UC Saros. And once again, we mentioned the Panthers were still able to get a whole bunch of shots on UC Saros. And hey, it just goes to show once again how valuable a player like Ryan McDonagh is when it comes to just how he's able to just battle in the corners and bring the puck back up the ice, and just for them to just be a leader on the team. And that's something that the Nashville Predators are definitely missing as they continue to struggle to get in on the score sheet. They are, as far as goals for, 30th, goals against 26th. Their penalty kill is still outstanding from what we talked about in their first matchup. At the time, they were first in the NHL, but also that again, hockey isn't always played at isn't always on the power play. Mostly played at 5-on-5, which the Predators struggle with. And the Panthers, as far as a team that mostly dominates possession and creates a whole bunch of shots, even though on Saturday they didn't create more of their second chance opportunities. And Joey Decord had a good view of the puck and Seattle was clearing the net front, I expect the Panthers to just respond in a game like this where the Predators are already down, but at the same time, the teams that are down and out, those are the teams that could be the most dangerous for the Panthers coming up. But hey, there's a little bit of something to play for once again, as the Toronto Maple Leafs won both their ends of the back-to-back over the weekend. So that's another thing for the Panthers on still what they're playing for. Although I'm not worried about where the Panthers ultimately finish. They could finish first, they could finish second, but as long as they're healthy, they are very comfortable going into a road environment if need be. Toronto needs the home ice advantage more than the Panthers do. If you're talking about playing in a playoff series in a possible second round for them, so really just get through this. Play to your identity, and we'll see where everything lands as far as the end of the regular season. But hey, who knows? We might get an update on Tkachuk sometime throughout the day and discuss more regarding his injury, if it in fact does fall into LTIR, which as of right now is not the case for the Panthers. But that's going to do it for today's edition of the show. On tomorrow's edition, we are going to be recapping tonight's game between the Florida Panthers and the Nashville Predators as they take on the Preds tonight from Bridgestone Arena. But in the meantime, if you like what you're hearing, please subscribe to the podcast to be notified every single time the Locked On Florida Panthers podcast jumps into your podcast feed. Don't forget to also subscribe to the other shows on Locked On NHL Network, including Locked On NHL, Locked On Fantasy Hockey, Flip Livingstone and Steel Roden, and Locked On NHL Prospects. Thank you once again for making the Locked On Florida Panthers podcast your first listen of the day. So I'm Armando Velez, signing off. And you've been listening to Locked On Florida Panthers podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, where it's your team every day.